Let's talk about agriculture in India. It's a story on an unbelievable scale. I mean, it employs nearly half the country's entire workforce. But there's a problem hiding in plain sight. You see, despite its massive size, it's falling behind. And the key to its future? Well, that might just lie in what it sells to the rest of the world. So let's dig in. We're going to tackle this in 5 parts. First, we'll get into the core puzzle of Indian agriculture. Then, we'll see how it stepped out onto the global stage. After that, we'll uncover a pretty serious gap that's been widening in its trade, look at the plan to tip the scales back, and finally ask what the future harvest could really look like. Okay, so to really get what's happening with India's trade, we have to start at home with the big, fundamental dilemma that sits right at the heart of its agricultural sector. Just think about this for a second. Agriculture employs nearly half of India's entire workforce. That's a staggering 46%. It is, without a doubt, the single biggest employer in the entire country. But here is where the puzzle comes in. While it's providing almost half the jobs, agriculture contributes only about 18% to the nation's economy. This huge gap, this massive disconnect between the number of people working and the economic value they're producing, well, that's the core problem. It means incomes for this giant workforce are stuck at rock-bottom levels. Economists actually have a name for this. They call it disguised unemployment. It's basically when you have way more people on the job than are really needed, which keeps everyone's individual productivity and wages really low. So the critical question becomes, how on earth do you raise incomes for this massive population? A huge part of the answer lies in selling to the rest of the world. And that leads us right into our next chapter, how India began its shift from simply trying to feed its own people to becoming a major player on the global stage. India's trade history has seen some pretty dramatic swings. After decades focused on just feeding itself after the Green Revolution, the big change came in 1991 with economic liberalization. Then, just 4 years later, joining the World Trade Organization really swung the doors wide open, creating a whole new framework for global agricultural trade. And wow, the results have been huge. Today, India is an absolute export powerhouse. You've got marine products leading the charge, followed by its world-famous basmati and non-basmati rice, spices, buffalo meat, and sugar. It's a pretty diverse list. So where is all this stuff going? The top buyers are an interesting mix of global superpowers and key regional neighbors, including the United States, China, the UAE, Bangladesh, and Vietnam. India's agricultural footprint is now truly global. But even as exports were becoming a huge success story, a new and kind of complicated challenge started bubbling up in the data. For one thing, check this out. While agricultural exports were growing at a really healthy rate of almost 9% per year, they were actually being outpaced by the manufacturing sector, which was growing even faster. So what does that mean? It means as a slice of the total export pie, agriculture was, believe it or not, shrinking. But that's only part of the story. The real concern for policymakers lies deep inside the agricultural trade balance itself. And here it is. This is the slide that really matters. India's agricultural imports are growing faster than its agricultural exports. It's a small difference year over year, sure, but when imports are consistently outgrowing exports, your trade surplus just starts to shrink. So what exactly is India buying so much of? The answer is overwhelmingly dominated by a single category: vegetable oils. I mean, look at that. A staggering 59% of all agricultural imports. This one category is the main engine driving all that rapid import growth. Now, this growing imbalance hasn't gone unnoticed. So in our next section, let's look at how India is actively trying to tip the scales back in its favor. So how does a country even begin to tackle a challenge this big? Well, it starts with a coordinated national strategy. The government rolled out this whole multi-pronged strategy. It includes a big, overarching agricultural export policy, financial help for exporters, funding to build better infrastructure, like ports and warehouses, and even a program to help Indian companies find new international customers. And the cornerstone of this whole thing is the agriculture export policy. Its goals are seriously ambitious. Double exports, diversify the kinds of products India sells, and maybe most importantly, find ways to make sure the benefits of global trade actually reach the farmers themselves. All right, so this brings us to our final section. With all these challenges and all these new policies in play, what does the path forward actually look like? And this slide really captures the big picture. Over the last 2 decades, India's role in global agricultural trade has grown significantly. Its share of global exports has more than doubled. But, and this is key, so has its share of global imports. It has become a much bigger player on both sides of the equation. You know, the source material for this explainer puts it perfectly. It says promoting exports isn't just an option, it's absolutely essential for achieving a favorable trade balance and for lifting up the entire agricultural sector. So the key takeaway is really this delicate balancing act. India has to manage its growing need for imports, like vegetable oil, while at the very same time unleashing the immense export potential of the millions of people who work in its agricultural sector. And that leaves us with the final, crucial question. Can these policies succeed? Can India transform its largest employer, the very backbone of the nation, into its next great export engine? The future harvest and the livelihoods of hundreds of millions really does depend